Hi everybody, this is Mrs. Swistek, and yesterday during art club we also talked about how to take any picture of your choice and go ahead and either enlarge it or copy it without tracing. So what I showed everybody yesterday was I printed out a picture off of the web of this awesome hero in Black history, and of course her name has fallen out of my brain. I should have written it down. If somebody would be so kind as to comment on the video or in the stream so that I can remember who she is, I would really appreciate it. Now, before we started actually drawing our person, what we have to do is we have to make a grid on our printout. And how you do that is really simple. You're going to take your printout, you're going to fold it in half, and you're going to make sure you use your fingers to go ahead and really crease that crease nice and sharply. And you're going to fold it in half again. So use your fingers, or you can even use I've seen some people use a pen or a pencil to really make sure those creases are nice and sharp. All right, once you're done unfolding it one way, you're going to go the opposite direction. Fold it in half and fold it in half again. Once again, make sure those creases are nice and sharp. Use your pencil or your finger to really rub over the creases so that once you open it, you can see those creases very well. Now, what I normally do when I'm teaching my actual art class is I have my students either use a marker or a pen to go over those fold lines. So make sure you take a straight edge of any type, whether that is, a folded up piece of paper like I have here, or maybe you have a folder and work it on top of a folder. That would work good, or a book, or a really heavy piece of paper to get ahead and draw your lines on your printout. And I've already done that once. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my drawing paper and I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to fold it in half 2 times, once in one direction, and I'm going to keep it that same direction, making sure my creases are nice and sharp, and doing it again. Okay. And yes, you can use that pencil trick or your pen, like I showed you, or your fingers to make sure your creases are nice and sharp. And then, of course, you're going to do it again in the opposite direction. I wonder why my paper is so hard to fold. It's 2 pieces. Silly Mrs. Swistek. All right, so I'm going to do my second folds the opposite direction, making those creases nice and sharp. Now, I've taught this particular drawing technique so many different times with my actual art classes. So if we were in person in my art room, we would be doing the exact same steps. The only difference is we would be using a larger paper. And this technique works really well, especially if you want to make something from, say, your 8.5 by 11 printout size to a large poster size. And somebody yesterday, I think it was Daniel yesterday, said, but Mrs. Swistek, those folds are going to mess up your picture. Actually, they're not. The only thing that is going to mess up your picture is if you do this next step a little too darkly. So when you take your straight edge and your pencil, so you want to make sure that you do this step in pencil. You want to go over your lines really nice and lightly because you are going to erase your lines. Now, of course, I'm using my super light pencil. This is a really kind of hard pencil. So a lot of times when I draw with it, it doesn't show up. On my camera, I'm going to use, and so you folks can see what I'm doing, I'm going to use just a regular pencil, and I'm going to draw my lines a little bit darkly so you can see exactly what I'm doing. Now, you'll notice how I fold my paper up and really get my ruler into that crease so that I get a nice, accurate, and straight line on my fold. And this will work for any image. So even if you're choosing not to do a person, maybe you're choosing to do some kind of logo, this would also work very well. And for those of you who might be using, wondering how to draw a particular drawing, you're having trouble, you're struggling with it, this is a great technique to use in case you're struggling with something and you really want to learn how to draw it. What happens is we use this grid to help break down the picture a lot further, and it makes it easier to draw by drawing its pieces rather than trying to just say, oh my God, I have to draw this absolute whole thing. Bug zooming around my nose today. All right, so here you go. I've got my paper all gridded out. My lines are a little more darker than I would normally suggest them to be, but I do want you to be able to see them in my camera. Now, keep in mind, my printout is vertical. All right, so that means that this is how it's printed out vertically. If she had printed out horizontally, I would need to make sure that I hold my paper horizontally. But since she's vertical, I'm going to hold my paper vertical. And yes, it does make a difference, because if I were to draw her like this, she'll come out looking normal. But if I draw her the opposite direction and try and use my paper the long ways, she's going to come out looking like really stretched and fat. And I don't want that to happen. I want her to look normal. So I'm going to hold my paper the long way. All right. I'm going to start with this box right here, which just so happens to be the first box on my piece of paper. Now you can see I have already gone ahead and divided my square into 4 smaller equal squares. You might say to me, Mrs. Swistek, why did you do that? Why? Because it breaks the boxes down a little bit further and you can accurately see where things belong a little bit better. All right. Now, if I look here, I'm seeing that her hair makes just this little tiny pie shape down here in the corner. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of make this pie shape. I'm not making it exactly straight. I'm just kind of wiggling my pencil so that you can see kind of the outline of her hair. Now I'm going to move over to the next box. And as I go along, you're going to see me folding my drawing out of the way so that it doesn't take up a lot of space on my drawing area. All right, so I've done those same 4 lines again. And now I'm going to continue on. Now, when I do this, I always start out with the basic outline of my person first. So what I'm going to try and do is show you how I did the outline. And then next session, we'll talk about filling everything in. So I can see that her hair goes from where I left off in my last box, kind of just below where the 2 lines intersect, and then it comes up and gets up above that halfway point. All right, and I'm going to continue on. And again, I'm going to draw my 4 lines. I'm going to draw my 4 lines. And I'm going to keep on going. And I'm going to pay attention to the shapes that I see in my picture. For example, right here, take a look at how the background makes this little tiny triangle. All right, so I want that to happen too, a little tiny triangle. Kind of makes it easier to match things up as you go along. Now, I've had people ask me, Mrs. Swistek, is it okay if I fold my paper smaller? You can. Just be careful you don't confuse yourself with so many boxes. So notice how I'm going along, box for box, piece for piece, step by step, to build the basic outline of this really beautiful woman. She is actually stunning. I love her afro. I wish my hair would do that. Some days it gets a little more puffy than others, but not like this. Her hair is just simply stunning. Okay. That works out well. That printer line served as my center line. And this comes swooping around to just below the halfway point. And yes, you know, you might see me jump around. I'm a person who does like to kind of jump around as I draw. I always got yelled at by my art teachers. You should always go from one thing to the next. That's just not my style. I like to kind of jump around. That's how I've always drawn. And it works for me. So as I say, if it works for you, then you do what works the best for you. All right, I'm seeing that's where her shoulder would be and how it makes that kind of, almost kind of like the top of a heart shape. All right, that's where my picture ends. And the bottom of my picture, it looks like it kind of comes across. Yes, it's not a bad idea to put that outside border frame in as you go along. That might be helpful for you. All right, I see that her shoulder makes a triangle here. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and make that triangle. And let's divide this one in half, and I already have this one divided in half kind of lightly. And you're just trying to duplicate what you see in each box. And once again, if it doesn't come out perfect, remember, you are an artist. You are doing what you think it looks like. You're not trying to be a photocopier. You're not trying to be a camera. You're trying to be an artist. And it's always about how an artist sees things and how you want people to see what you're creating, not about whether you can absolutely positively duplicate it. I mean, yes, there are some artists, and that is what they do best, is they absolutely positively can duplicate something. You want to just have a little bit of fun as you go along. Now, of course, if there are any lines that you want to erase as you go along, it's like I know that this is all going to be dark, we can go ahead and erase those lines and get them out of my way. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is as far as you probably should be able to get, although if you want to keep on going, you can. Just take my advice, take your time, go box for box, piece for piece, pay attention to where lines cross over, pay attention to where details are actually in our box. And don't forget some of those portrait drawing lessons that we talked about as we went along. Now, of course, I'm going to have to give you a lesson on how to shade this up. That will be for next session. But I hope this was super helpful, and I hope you were able to see how I was able to develop my basic outline drawing of this beautiful woman in Black history. Please, 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 someone email me her name because I did forget. Shame on me. All right, I hope this was helpful. I will see you next week in Art Club. Hopefully you have some work done on your locker, and hopefully you have a picture started for Black History Month. Have a great and wonderful rest of your day.